Hello and welcome to my presentation for the PPSI Assessment 2, where I'm going to be reviewing my placement with Hansa Rugby League Club. In terms of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to introduce the presentation and talk about the models that are applied, plus how I found my placement, my duties, my biggest research project, which was around proposals for events that the club can put on, or specifically on non-match days. Understanding the specifics of working upon a match day, which we did many during our time there, my academic development, career development, my personal development, the plan of action of how I can use those skills going forwards, and then career goals, academic goals, personal goals, and how this relates to my major independent study for next year. So I secured my placement through the university's career pathways. And this included working on home matches and creating proposals for events that the club can hold in the future, of which I did a range of roles. On the match days I did a range of roles. These went from dealing with the team sheets to hospitality to working alongside the press officer as well. So the first model I'm going to use is the Gibbs's reflective cycle from 1988. This is a well-structured framework which has been used a number of times about embarking upon reflection. As you can see, there's a description of what happens, feelings, evaluation, an analysis, conclusion, and a plan of action as to how you can learn from those mistakes and how you can take those skills moving forwards. And in that plan of action, I'm going to use the Borton's process of reflection. And this is going to be applied in terms of how I learned from my experiences with placement. It's a simple, easy to follow, and just uses 3 questions. And this allows for reflection without having to follow a regimented structure. So as I said, in terms of finding my placement, you can see more about that in entry 1. I used the university careers tool and presented to the club's general manager and to a non-executive director in terms of how they can increase attendances for matches where there are going to be low number of away supporters specifically. And as well as that, I also put ideas across about how the club can engage with a younger audience. So one of the suggestions I gave was to give a flexible option for season tickets. So for example, you could specifically pick the matches expected to have a lower attendance and give a slight discount for younger people to help attract a younger audience as well. And going there and presenting was good for me as I wanted to improve upon confidence, which is something that I cited in assessment 1 as needing to improve. Skills of presenting can be developed through practice and training, as Payne says in 2000. So in terms of my duties on placement, you can see more on this throughout the journal entries. Planning and working upon events, specifically in hospitality. So this included the club's launch night, where all the playing squad for the season was announced, plus the new kit was announced. So this was held in the club's main hospitality area in the Phoenix Bar, which is in the main stand overlooking the pitch. In terms of the match days, again, as I said, I had a range of duties. One of them was dealing with the team sheets, of which there are around 250 to 300 printed off each game. So all of this had to make all of the information there needed to be correct, including the player information, the match day sponsor, the club sponsors, and making sure that they were all visible, as I was told that had been a problem for the club in the past. Understanding the role of social media as well was good to see. So at the club's launch night, I had the opportunity to speak to some former players, of which I asked them about the importance of the fixture with Leeds Rhinos, which was coming up, and that content was used on the club's social media channels to help promote the fixture, of which there was a record crowd for this season. So it was important and nice to see that A, my work had paid off, and B, it was good to understand the role of social media and how important that is, particularly for the smaller clubs, in helping to drive engagement and attendances. And as I mentioned, and I'll come on to in a second, the main research project was around creating proposals for events that the club can help to put on in the future, specifically on non-match days. So this included use of both hospitality areas and some use of the pitch as well, which we'll come on to now. So more on this can be found in journal entry 3, but myself and another Leeds Beckett student who was also on placement, came up with the idea of 12 Nights of the Phoenix, referring to the Phoenix Bar, which is part of the club's facilities. So we came up with ideas for comedy nights, student nights, which I'll come on to in a second, evenings and Q&As with former players, race nights, local sports clubs being able to use the facilities, whether it be using the pitches or use of the bars for, say, end of season awards, Christmas functions, fundraising events, or end of season dinners, of which Hansel are going to have one this year. Another thing that we came up with was alternative travel options. So there's very little in terms of public transport on match days that is easily accessible and within walking distance of the ground. So one of the ideas that we came up with was an alternative option of a shuttle bus that runs from either Leeds Central Station or Cottingley Station to help get fans to and from areas of public transport. As I mentioned, students can use the hot bars and hospitality areas. So this was something that was well received by the club and that they're going to follow up on. And also elongated hospitality packages for evening kickoffs. So for example, the Good Friday game against Keighley Cougars, which there were a lot of away supporters, plus a sold out hospitality package. The hospitality packages were elongated for that game as it was a bank holiday, and the club knew that there were going to be a lot of people there, of which there was a better return on that match as well. So it was nice to see that myself and the other student I was working with, our ideas come to fruition. So I mentioned a lot about match days there, of which we worked on a lot of them when we were on placement, and there were a lot of issues to overcome at first, not just for myself and the other students there, but there were also issues for the club to deal with, as they were hosting events with full capacity for the first time in 2 years post-COVID. There's more about that on entry 2, about some of the teething problems we had with queues outside the ground, plus the ticketing issues. But it was good to learn from those experiences and gain more of an understanding on match days, particularly in different roles as well. So we wouldn't always be doing the same role. So some weeks I'd do team sheets, some weeks I'd be working in hospitality and getting more of an understanding of that. And 1 week I worked alongside the press officer, which is more on that on entry 4, and I'm going to speak about it bit more detail later. So they're all good experiences and helps broaden our understanding and our knowledge of what's required on a match day. So in terms of how this relates to my career development, prior to coming on placement, I wanted to gain more of an understanding of which part of the sports industry I wanted to be in, which is something that I spoke about in assessment 1. I definitely think having the experience of working on events, being a part of them, has definitely given me a taste for it, and I'd like to explore that further. And also being able to broaden my knowledge about sport, which I wasn't too familiar with before going on placement. I think that's definitely going to help in terms of giving me more rounded skills in the sports industry. And as well as that, as I mentioned, working in different areas helped me understand what's required to help run a sporting event successfully, and having that plan for progression and development post placement I think is definitely going to help my clarity of thought, which I'm going to come on to a little bit when I talk about my goals in the action plan. So for my academic development, my interview and presentation skills were significantly improved by going to present to club officials before I got the placement. That gave me again confidence, which I spoke about in assessment 1, and also working as part of a team, whether it be working with the press officers or working with the other students or presenting ideas. That's definitely not just applicable in sports but in everything that we do as part of the course. Confidence and knowledge improves learning, and in turn creates a more productive and confident student. That was Adam's year in 2009. So for my personal development, as I said, I wanted to communicate and give more precise information, and there's more about that in entry 4. Plus also the creative skills in entry 3, which we needed to call upon and use and put all our ideas together when doing our research projects around events. The ability to evaluate mistakes, which I'm going to come on to a bit further in the action plan, particularly for the first game back when there were some of the problems that we encountered. We did some preparation the week after that. We did additional preparation around the queuing system and the ticketing. Thankfully, those problems didn't resurface again. And a working environment that has a culture of learning from mistakes enables people to get the best out of themselves. So my action plan, as I said earlier, is going to be used. I'm going to apply the Borton's model of reflection, process of reflection, into my plan. And for my goals, I'm going to have 3 goals: 1 career related, 1 academic related, and 1 personal related. And this model is useful for summarising events and looking forwards to the future, as you can see on the screen. So for my career goal, I'd like to continue working with or alongside Hansler. This can be with another placement or a volunteering or internship. By doing that and continuing to broaden my knowledge and gain that understanding of not just on match days but also away from match days, the preparation that goes into it and what happens behind the scenes, I think that's going to be really important. My academic goal, I'm going to want to have clarity around targets and progression. So that's going to be done by continuing to set small targets and working towards them, both over the short term, medium term and long term. And that's going to be useful, I think, for a dissertation, which is going to be a long research project for next year. So my short-term goals can be done by October 2022, medium-term goals by February 2023, and my long-term goals by completion of the course. So for my personal goals, I'd like to improve my referencing within my work. That's been an issue for me sometimes in previous assessments, and also to revisit the content on my Beckett around applying those skills, so resources such as quote and unquote, and also being able to go back and have a look at my previous assessments, see firstly the similarity number and being able to understand where I went wrong and how I can improve. Also applying the Gibbs reflective module onto that. How will I now have completed that? Well, I can run more plagiarism checks as I'm writing assignments up, so doing it bit by bit and being able to break things down into smaller targets, which also relates to my academic goal. And continuing to revise those skills, so not just looking at the resources once or twice, but continuing to have a look at them, continuing to learn different parts of referencing and what can be done to help improve that. And that can be starting immediately from my next couple of assignments, and that can be done especially for dissertation until completion of the course. So coming on to my dissertation, how my experiences on placement can help relate to my major independent study. So writing and presenting information concisely, that's going to be necessary for writing a dissertation, particularly when conducting research as well. Being able to condense those numbers and those figures into things that can be presented well and presented easily is going to be vital. Referencing in the correct way is going to be imperative for dissertation writing as well. and having a wide understanding of the sports industry. So as I mentioned, being able to broaden my knowledge of rugby league whilst on placement is going to be important for this. Those are my references there, and thanks for listening.